So by this time, everybody knows that former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin was convicted Tuesday, April 20th, in the May 25th, 2020 death of George Floyd. They found him guilty of second degree unintentional murder, punishable up to 40 years in prison, third degree murder, punishable up to 25 years in prison, and second degree manslaughter, punishable up to 10 years in prison. Um, this comes as a giant sigh of relief to a lot of people uh, that were worried and concerned. I know I was. It felt like a collective sigh that was released that day when he was found guilty, because honestly, all they did was show over and over again how George Floyd was murdered by Derek Chauvin. We still have the other police officers that are supposed to be being held accountable as well, but everyone's really kind of looked at Derek Chauvin as the main person in this case that they really needed to find guilty. It's like a hope of dismantling. Somebody said hope of dismantling systemic racism, and this really is. I mean, it's a win, but at the same time, we're worried about what are the real outcomes going to be when it comes to dismantling systemic racism. Even before the verdict came out, Chauvin's defense team, they moved for a mistrial because of what Maxine Waters had commented. She had attended a protest that was happening the weekend before the trial, the verdict came out, and we have some comments from her that, of course, they tried to take it and raise hell with.
This is guilty for murder. I don't know whether it's in the first degree, but as far as I'm concerned, it's first degree.
Ms. Congresswoman, what happens if we do not get what you just told? What should the people do? What should protesters on the street do?
I didn't hear you.
What happens?
What should protesters do?
Well, we got to stay on the street, and we've got to get more active. We've got to get more confrontational. We've got to make sure that they know that we mean business.
So she did an interview afterwards with the Griot, and it was published on Monday. And Waters said she was talking about confronting the U.S. criminal justice system and referred to herself as a nonviolent person. I mean, to anybody who was really watching it, I don't feel like she was trying to incite any violence. But of course, Republicans had to jump on it. They had McCarthy. He is the minority leader for the Republicans, and of course he jumped all over it, and he said that they need to hold her accountable for inciting violence. And of course he had his own tweet to put up as well. It says Maxine Waters is inciting violence in Minneapolis just as she has incited it in the past. If Speaker Pelosi doesn't act again in this dangerous rhetoric, I will bring action this week, which they did. The House voted on Tuesday afternoon to block a resolution from Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy to censure Democratic Republican Maxine Waters. And of course, even Marjorie Taylor Greene had something to say when it came to the whole thing, which, if that's not the pot calling the kettle black, I don't know what is, honestly. But of course, they're just jumping to try to see something that they can say, oh, you guys incited violence. No, this was not an incited violence. This was a call for justice. Even Nancy Pelosi defended Maxine Waters, and it's just like, I don't understand how you guys can try to do this and persecute her the way that you were coming after her, but you can stand by and let other Republicans help make sure that the Capitol riot happened.
So there's the best part of the dualistic argument that's happening right now, is that there's literally the argument that they want to have is that, yes, a senator probably, or a representative or a House representative, shouldn't be talking about rhetoric about a ongoing trial. How many times have Republicans done that in the recent years that you know of already? So it's a false dichotomy that we're talking about here. We're talking about like it's only okay when the Republicans do it, but when the Democrats do it, then they're out of their minds for doing it. Maxine Waters has literally just had the ability to go out there to a look. The way I looked at that interview was already that somebody asked her a question. She didn't hear it. She just was like, "Oh, protesters. Overall, I'm for protesting." That's the way that she responded immediately. She just didn't have a negative response to the actual protesters themselves, and that immediately means that being confrontational means being like, I'm going to tell the police, fuck you. Sorry. If that offends a police officer so much that they shoot me, then they shouldn't have a goddamn badge.
Yeah, there's been a lot of things going on recently with police acting up to random people. It's pretty sad. That's pretty sad.
Well, she said too that she just couldn't stay. The reason that she came, I mean, she's a representative of California, but she said she just couldn't stay at home and watch everything happen. She felt the need to go out into the streets with people and protest. I think it was a very strong feeling that a lot of people had, because there have been many times where we felt that there was clear-cut cases of police misconduct that they were actually going to be held accountable for, and they weren't. Just off the top of my head, of course, Eric Gardner. We thought that was open and shut, that they would have been able to find him guilty, but they didn't. Even though he used an illegal chokehold, they ended up killing him in front of all these people the same way that George Floyd. And that just reignited the whole thing when it came down to us witnessing George Floyd's death on TV and all over social media. It just reignited that whole thing of Eric Gardner asking for help and telling them that I can't breathe, and how many times do we have to hear that before that they can actually say, okay, maybe we need to look at how everything is happening.
So I'm going to give them some. Go ahead if you have some. No. I was going to say that it gives them some elasticity to their argument. Their argument too is about like that it doesn't matter that it's a black life being snuffed out. What if you finally get to see that there are white people going through the same goddamn thing? We're literally out here fighting for your protection as well. Black people are saying that we want to abolish the police or defund the police, depending on whatever level you're at, because we want to protect all of you in some way. So it's very interesting that the dichotomy here is that it's only fair when the police are there to protect your merchandise, the things that you bought.
Yep.
That's the only time that it matters.
Yep. Totally agree. They're meant to de-escalate. They're not meant to incite stuff, right? So you're totally correct, man. I totally agree with what you're saying. Like, it's only when it's for the individual that they're protecting. Like, they're like, oh, I'm safe now that the police officer, it's like, calling up for backup, basically. Instead of calling up for somebody to de-escalate, you're asking for somebody to come in on your behalf. If you were that person that called them or whatever it is, and they have they don't acknowledge anything that happens to the other person, even though it might have been excessive. It's not cool, yo.
What gets me is it seems like there's becoming more and more situations where people do call the police. They call the police and then they end up regretting it. They end up regretting calling the cops because of what ends up happening.
Some people like it more, though.
Well,
like
some people do.
Some people are like, yo, he deserved. He had it coming. That guy who got shot for stealing my bike. He had it coming, getting shot.
But it feels like there's so many stories, especially now, coming out. But I know a story with a woman whose girlfriend, she had her daughter was a girlfriend of this young man. He was very troubled already. They said he had already different instances of violence, and she called the police because she found out that he had hit her daughter, which anybody would have reacted like that. I know I would have reacted the same way, but it ended up in violence, and of course this young man ended up getting shot. Of course, this young man ends up being black, and this young woman that he was involved with was white, and her mother was white. And I do believe this woman when she says, I absolutely did not want that to happen. I did not want him to get shot. I did not want him to die. We are mourning his death, and I do believe her. The better part of me wants to believe that she did not want this young man shot, especially knowing he was a troubled teen. She did not want him shot. But it seems like we're getting to that point. So how many more calls of you calling the police on the police do we have to hear? There are plenty of those calls where situations start to get out of control to the point where people are like, oh my God, why did I call the police? Or, oh my God, who do we stop the police? Who do we get to stop the police? Because you're standing there in a helpless situation where you can't stop them because they're the police. What happens to you if you try to stop them? You get shot too. You know, and there's no complaints if everybody's dead. That's fine, right?
It's pretty sick.
I'm sorry. Abolish the police. Defund the police. I'm sorry. I've been trying to be the one who's been on the edge here and been like a little, I don't know, conservative on the way my language sometimes, but no, defund the police.